Soren, for the record. Don't have a lot to say, but let me be clear. We do have freedom of speech. If we would choose to repeat something somebody else said, we are within our rights to do that, just to make that clear. I do stand in favor of the truth. From what I've read, I don't believe the textbooks in question are truthful or accurate, and they need to be replaced. I ask that you vote to discard your biased textbook committee's recommendations and follow your oath to represent us. Remember, you are required to operate within the consent of the people, not within the consent of a union. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kesselring. I appreciate it. Helen Wolf.
Helen Wolf, Sarasota, Florida. This issue concerns me gravely. I have researched the issues in other counties in Florida, and I would like to let you know, in case you don't know, that there is a free book review for accuracy called Veridity Educate. Maybe by bringing in somebody like that, in addition to your committee, would be something to consider in the future. The other, I agree with most of what was said tonight, but somebody asked, why do we have these issues in books? And usually, if one follows the money, you'll find out why that is. The two biggest publishing companies in this country are McGraw-Hill, which this book is, and Pearson. And if you look at who the investors are in Pearson, it makes a lot of sense why this is happening in our textbooks. And as school board members, you do have the choice to select books. Last year, the legislation gave you that power again. However, there will be less and less choices because these companies are out to sell their products and make money. History doesn't change. We don't need a new history books every 4 or 5 years. The reason they are being changed is to change history.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Those are all the cards I have and that have been turned in. We'll continue on with the rest of the meeting. Dr. Whitaker, your comments.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here and for expressing your heartfelt concerns about these textbooks. I want to share with you just a little bit about the process. Without comment, please. Teachers in Charlotte County teach the standards. And I have the standards in front of me. The World History course, for which the book under consideration is the primary text, has 115 standards to be taught in 180 days of school, minus too many days of testing that you take out for non-instructional time. Of the 115 standards that are listed, 7 standards address the teaching of Islam in one way, shape, or form, and 6 standards address the teaching of Christianity. We expect our teachers to teach the standards. The textbook is a tool. A teacher doesn't begin to have enough time to teach an entire textbook. When I was in school, we started at the beginning of the text, we went all the way through to the end of the text. Our teachers are required to teach the standards, and in the standards, I find appropriate balance, and I don't find statements of indoctrination. Pardon me, I don't recall that any of us on the dais laughed at you when you make statements. So I expect, excuse me,
Excuse me, there'll be no outbursts amongst the public, or else
I expect the same
you'll be
decorum.
removed. We expect the same attention to the comments being made by the superintendent or any of us that we gave to each and every one of you who chose to speak tonight. So please.
Try not lying.
We have young people in this room, and if we're going to have a civil discourse on an issue for which we disagree, it's a great lesson for them to learn how to do that properly. And name calling and catcalling and accusatory call-outs are not acceptable. I'm sorry, but it needed to be said. So I just simply want the same respect we gave you to be given to each of us when we speak. And it's unfortunate that I did have to lecture. We follow the standards in all of these courses. I will tell you, one of the things that weighs on me, and I've listened to your concerns about proselytization and indoctrination of kids. We've used this textbook for 8 3/4 years. And we have yet to have a parent come forward and say, I'm concerned about what my child's learning, I'm concerned about the text, my child is being swayed or proselytized, that offends me. And so it troubles me that while I understand the nature of the concerns in the text, some of what is there is troubling. As a whole, when the text is taught in the classroom, with all of the standards that have to be covered, and the charge to the teachers, and the fact that most of our teachers are highly professional in what they teach, they sort out the wheat from the chaff, if you will, in their instruction. If that was not the case, we would have had a long line of parents knocking on our door, complaining about what their kids are being taught in these courses. And so I tip my hat to our teachers who are charged with an extremely difficult task, and that is taking text. And I will tell you from all the years of my experience, being a student, being at school, learning to be an educator and teaching, that you're not going to find a high school social studies text that does not have some really funky stuff in it. It's in a sense, unfortunately, the nature of the beast. High school textbooks, for the most part, are written by college professors. Each one contracted to write a different part of the book. It's compiled and it's sent out. State of Florida reviews them. They take out the ones that either miss the mark on the standards or are particularly egregious with their statements, and the rest are approved to go through. So I'm not going to belabor it, but I thought it was important to explain that what is taught in the classroom are the standards and how the books are used, and the other materials that are used are in the purview of our teachers. That said, the board has received my recommendation that I posted to you in board docs. While I acknowledge the sincerity and the concerns of those opposing the continued use of the challenge materials, after review of those, and in consideration of the discussion not only at the table, but in my looking at the lack of concerns expressed by parents, I'm recommending that this book be used for one last year, and we review the new textbooks next spring. Somebody asked to see a copy of the new textbook. We adopted a textbook in 2013, have not had the money to implement it. The new textbook review starts next spring, and we will review then the new textbooks. There's no need to buy the 2013 book. It'd be a waste of money. the 2016-17 year is the year of full implementation, and I know that sounds like it's a long ways away, but it's 1 year away before we begin. So I'm recommending that, while acknowledging the concerns that there are in the book, that for this last year we continue to use it, and then we purchase a new textbook. And when we do that purchase, it will be following the new guidelines in state statute.
We're not done.
Are there any other comments or questions of the superintendent about the process? Then the chair will entertain a motion. Are there any questions about board members? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I didn't make one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the superintendent.
Okay. The recommendation.
Continue use for all year.
Okay. The recommendation by the superintendent is continued use for 1 year and to reevaluate when the new criteria are put out by the state. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Discussion by the board members.
Mr. Chairman, it's my full understanding that, and what Dr. Whitaker just told us, and from my review of what the Director of Social Studies supplied to us earlier this week, that there will be a thorough and complete review and a replacement text in less than 18 months. Is that correct, Dr. Whitaker?
Yeah, it'll be next spring.
Any other comment by the board members?
Yeah.
Ms. Rendell?
No, there is no comments now.
And
Ms. Rendell, you have the floor.
that's why I'm going to add.
Oh,
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Ordinarily, we have comment at the conclusion. Ms. Rendell is implying the comment is to be now. Is that
well,
correct?
we're in discussion on the motion, so further comment on the motion is what I,
Okay, no further
Yeah.
comment on the motion.
okay. Okay, there's one comment that I want to direct before we finish this portion, because there are allegations of sunshine law improprieties and those kinds of things. As I understand and have consulted attorneys and people with expertise in the sunshine law, there is an exemption for committees created by the superintendent that are fact-finding committees that report to the superintendent. That is the process that was used for the initial meeting of the committee because it was intended to be a fact-finding committee. It was then expanded to include other people and other viewpoints. At that point in time, it became eligible for the sunshine law, and as Mr. McKinley said in his statement, while the language is a little bit murkier at that point, we decided, or the administration decided, to err on the side of caution, and that from that point on, any meetings would be held and noticed according to the sunshine law. So that is what was done, and if Mr. McKinley has any comment, he's free to jump in. He has nothing to add. At this point in time, we'll take a vote, and then I think each of us has comments after the process or as part of the process that we would like to add to what has been said, because there are a number of explanations that I think we all want to express, and that's what will happen at the next point in the meeting. There's a motion on the floor to approve the superintendent's recommendation to continue using the material for 1 more year until the next process begins, and that is the motion. All in favor of the motion as presented by by the board as suggested by the superintendent, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board member comment. We'll start with you, Mrs. Rendell.
I've heard a lot about making sure that our students only hear and are only taught the truth, and that our textbooks only contain the truth. Unfortunately, we all see things differently. Truth is often distorted by one's viewpoint, education, religion, personal biases, and fears and other feelings. 10 people witness an accident and all 10 swear their account is the truth. So whose version of the truth do we believe about these textbooks? As a school board member, it is my duty to make decisions based on solid evidence, not on emotion, popular opinion, or influence of specific individuals or groups. Because I take these issues seriously, I have done my homework. I read the state standards, I've talked with parents, students, and others. I've read the Bible, I've contacted the main author of The Earth and Its Peoples. I've consulted with different experts, and most importantly, I have read every single page of both of these textbooks to try to be as objective as possible in my journey to find the truth. I was going to comment on 4 different of the issues, and I'm only going to comment on one of them and then go to a conclusion. I just wanted to talk about regarding the concern that the sheer volume of information presented was far from balanced with more pages devoted to Muslims. If you look only at the chapters specifically devoted to Islam or Christianity, it does appear that Islam has more pages devoted to it than does Christianity. However, if you actually go through both books, 1,000 pages each, as I have done, you will see that there are far more pages devoted to Christianity than there are to Islam. Beginning with Jesus, the early Christian church, the Roman Empire, Constantine, the different popes, the Franks, Charlemagne, the Great Schism, Byzantine Empire, Middle Ages, Renaissance, the Reformation, the missionaries, the colonists, and on, and even the chapter on Islam. Christianity is woven throughout that chapter and throughout both books. And that makes sense because Christianity is a major part of the history of our world. How could it be otherwise? How could it not be woven through our books? In summary, after studying the evidence, I found the objections to be unfounded. So I agree with the superintendent's recommendation. And finally, throughout this whole textbook adventure, and especially tonight, I've been reminded of a popular saying of the 1990s, and that is, what would Jesus do? I think it really suits this situation tonight. What would Jesus do if he were in this audience or up here on the dais with us? I believe Jesus would do what he did best. That is, show love. He would listen deeply and compassionately. He would accept us all completely, and he would show great kindness to everyone. As the Prince of Peace, he would promote unity and harmony. And as the embodiment of truth, he would help us love our neighbor and to love whom we see as our enemies.
Ms. Miller.
I knew that we all read both books and thoroughly, and I too, it's I've listened to you this evening and I've read your emails, every one of them. I've read the pages in the books that are being challenged. I have searched the internet and I have spoken to staff. We as a school board are obligated to provide an excellent education for all of our students, regardless of language, race, or ethnic background. We are bound by the Constitution and the many laws, regulations, rules, and policies required by local, state, and federal government. As far as the selection of our textbooks, we also have rules to follow. When a new cycle is announced, the vendors submit titles to the Florida Department of Education, also known as DOE. They then select a short list of materials to be evaluated by state reviewers. They are looking at contests based on specific specifications and statutory requirements and make their recommendations for the state-approved list. Based on these recommendations, the DOE signs contracts with the vendors, and the selected materials are sent to the individual school districts for a final adoption committee review. After